What's up, YouTube? Mr Lowkey. Dating in Japan, the gentleman's guide. Hi everyone, I've been watching a couple of videos on this topic on YouTube, and I think it's time for me to make a version based on my experiences in Japan and answer some popular questions, of course in the format of a gentleman's guide. So the first thing I want to answer is about racism in Japan. The short answer is yes. There is a type of racism in Japan, but it's not the type you may be expecting. So within like the service world, 99.999% of the time, Japanese service is incredible. I've experienced almost 99.9999% of the time zero discrimination. You can walk into any shop and it's always the same irashaimase as if you were Japanese. Service is always on point. And if you watch a video, The Black Experience in Japan by Ranzo in Japan, I really like the answers a lot of the people gave, and I agree with it entirely. The 0.00001% of the time you have a problem, it's usually in Roppongi or maybe Shibuya. There have been stories of clubs not letting people in based on what race or what country they're from, and it's a type of racial ignorance that, again, can be beaten. You won't encounter it in most places, but at times it does happen where some clubs just won't let you in. Their fear is that you may not understand Japanese or you may cause trouble, but show them, like, study your Japanese and show them that you won't cause trouble and you should be fine. 0.001% of the time. Now, there have been stories of maybe a barber may be scared, they may not do a good job, they don't know what to do with you, and they may not let you, into a particular shop based on your race. That can happen. More of a racial ignorance than a full-on racism. In Japan, you don't get that Jim Crow segregation or apartheid-style racism. Racism is a worldwide problem, and Japan is no exception. But the racism in Japan, I'd say, is a small speed bump that you can get over, and you can beat it. Always stay positive and don't use it as an excuse not to have an amazing time in Japan, because there are many examples of people from countries you wouldn't even imagine having incredible lives in Japan. So Japan is still an amazing place. Racism is worldwide. It's not unique to one particular country, and it is beaten with education and you beating those stereotypes. So again, that's all I have to say about that topic. The type of racism you find in Japan is more a social racism, and I'm going to speak more on the reason why it's there, and it's based on like history and contemporary media. Those are the two reasons I really want to talk about more. So I'm going to go quite in depth, and the video is going to be quite long, but we've got to do it. Now, because this is dating in Japan, a gentleman's guide, I want to say that no matter what race you are, dating is possible but difficult. And you have to fail a lot, and better to fail fast so that you sort of go into the right direction. I think Japanese society, there's a little compartment for everybody, and it's all about finding where to place yourself. Again, there are many examples of people succeeding, and the way it works is not always intuitive, but I'm going to do my best to describe the situation. So please visualize with me, and we'll get through it. So the first thing I want to talk about is there's a type of racial hierarchy. There are certain races that are on top, and others they prefer, and others that are unpopular and not preferred, not really in demand. Not everyone follows this racial hierarchy, but mainstream society, I would say, follows it. And I'm going to speak about historical reasons why it's there, and also in contemporary media why it is there. So I'll first describe this racial hierarchy that I've described from my experiences. most women would prefer to date someone Japanese. Mainstream, which is completely normal. Most societies in the world are like that. A certain type of Japanese, though. But most would prefer to date Japanese. After that, I would say what is also very much in demand in terms of dating, mixed race Japanese. So Japan mixed with probably a European country. After that, I'll say somebody who's natively French or German, American or Britain, Euro-American or or British. After that, third, I would say Korean, Chinese, other European countries or Euro-Australians. Fourth, I would say Okinawans, Osakans, Turkish, Ukrainians, Czechs, but hey, isn't Osaka a place in Japan? Yes, but there has been discrimination against native Okinawans and people native to Osaka. So, after that, I'll say number 5, rest of Asia. There is Asian on Asian discrimination, and I'm going to speak more on the history of why that is there. But I'll also put them on the racial hierarchy as well. Number 6, I would say Latinos, Latino Americans, Mexican Americans, Mexicans, Arabs, Indians, Nepali, Sri Lankans, and I'll say African Americans. Right at the bottom, I'll say Africans, native Africans. All of whatever African country is all seen as the same place. Morocco and Egypt, though, I could say more Arab, could be perceived more Arab, but all of Africa, very negative image. And I'm going to speak why that is the case. Now, again, I have to say, race shouldn't be an excuse for you not to enjoy your time in Japan. It is a small speed bump that you can jump over. And race isn't the only thing people are looking for in dating. It's just a small part. Things like social status, influence, charisma, your manners, your job is a major one. Resources, your style, your social skills, looks, your physique, your compatibility, again, is another major part. So if you are relying purely on your race to date, so for example, maybe if you're white and someone's only dating you because you are white, you are gonna lose when someone else who's also white but with a real game comes by. You will lose. So again, don't let race stop you, and don't let race be the only thing you have going for you. You need to hit all the other you need to check all the other boxes too. Your spirituality, your health, your ability to navigate Japanese culture, another big one. So again, don't let yourself be displaced by someone else. If you're looking for a more long-term relationship, you need more than just race. You need full real game. Now, I also want to talk about why this hierarchy exists the way it is, and why is there white privilege within this racial hierarchy. And if you look at the history of Japan, starting from, again, you can Google this and there's so many other good videos about it, but during the Tokugawa period, Japan was very ethnocentric, so they thought Japan was the number one. And during the Tokugawa period, Japan didn't trade with the rest of the world. It was closed off, except for some parts of Nagasaki. They'll trade with the Dutch and they'll trade with the Chinese, but generally Japan was closed off. And during that time period, they assumed they were number one, descendants of gods. They would win wars, and they were very united. But fast forward a bit to the forced entry into Japan by Commodore Perry and the term gunboat diplomacy. And if you Google that, it'll teach you a lot about how they used shock and awe to influence Japan. And then Japan then saw that, oh wait, American culture and European culture had actually come quite far, and they had developed a lot from exploiting other countries and colonizing Africa. And I'll speak about that as well. And so their perception of foreign people was affected quite a bit by that event, and that historical event. Another interesting event is if you look at the story of Yasuke, if you Google it, or if you go to Yana YZ's channel, Elise really described two amazing events. First, Yasuke, the first non-Japanese samurai serving Lord Oda Nobunaga, and just how he was perceived as, exotic and different, and actually he was treated better in Japan than he was by the Catholic priest who he was an indentured servant to, and how he went back to slavery when his time serving Lord Nobunaga came to an end. Amazing story, but it depicts a lot about how Japan was first coming to terms, and the reaction to foreign people was also very, very interesting. It also speaks, that same video I mentioned, but Elise described how Japan was going to have a closer relationship with Ethiopia, an African country. So Yasuke in the stories was from sub-Saharan Africa, believed to be Mozambique. This story of Japan having close ties with Ethiopia, incredible story. Also describes how Japan initially viewed Africa in a positive way. So how did Africa get to this bottom of this racial hierarchy that I'm describing? And a major part of it was some European countries, not all, but some, and how Britain didn't want closer tie African countries having allies outside of the West, because it would make Africa easy to exploit. Now this brings me into what is the origin of, or the source of this worldwide racism that I'm describing. And it comes from Africa being really strong, Africa having a lot of resources that some European countries wanted to exploit. So if Africa was this terrible place, why did those European countries go to Africa? If there was too much pride, too much unity in Africa, would have made Africa very hard to exploit. So the source of a lot of this racism is to exploit Africa, is to make Africa look bad to the rest of the world, so the world would not ally with Africa, and it's easy to exploit. So it is easy to get cobalt from Congo, easy to completely control Africa. If African people were as terrible as the media describes, if all these stereotypes of Africa being a negative image, low class, impoverished, savage, gangsters, violent, dangerous, stupid, or genetically inferior, why did those European countries, why did America take them from Africa to live with them in their houses, rape their women? If African women are not beautiful, why was all this done to them? So a lot of worldwide racism is purely to exploit African or any other culture. Similar racism from Japan against South Korea, South Korea against Vietnam. It is purely to exploit other countries. So with the history of those things, a lot of the major Western brands, Western media, discredit Africa completely. And there have been so many acts by governments to really perpetuate this image. Now, if you look at who owns these companies, who that perpetuate bad, particularly black images, you can see where they're owned. So with that contemporary media and history, movies portraying it in one way, it affects this racial hierarchy and the thinking. So a lot of Japanese people have actually never met somebody like a community of African people, and when they do, usually it's the worst place possible. Roppongi, or maybe some parts of Harajuku, with maybe some, not all, some street touts, and this gives them a perception of the entire continent, and really that's not the case at all. Whereas often when some Japanese people get the opportunity to study abroad, or if they visit another country on tourism, or if they watch a movie, their opinion of a particular European country is usually quite good, because they get a wider, more whole view than a particular area. So again, these stereotypes can be beaten with education and time. So don't let it ruin your time in Japan. And it's up to you to be an ambassador for your culture, and not to sit and complain and say, oh, racism, or you can beat it. And racism is something we need to clean from this planet completely. So again, don't let it stop you. Know the origins of racism, know why it's there, and know how to get rid of it. Just moving on to history again. History shapes a lot of the Japanese personality. So in Japan, it's a country with relatively harsh weather. Only 20% of land is usable. It's mostly mountains. So you can't farm every part of throughout the year and grow food, and you have to be very organized and collective. So rules and being on time and people playing a certain role in society is essential for survival. So survival is something I come back to again in dating. Dating is it's a survival thing, and it's built into like your psychology and the way you go about it. And there are different things that influence it. So race is not the only thing. So moving on to just this thing of rules and roles in society, there's a lot of pressure on women and a type of discrimination against women, a sexism that forces women to play one role. And there's two ways that Japanese people react to this. Either they'll be ultra conservative and follow this particular rule set on them, or they'll be ultra liberal and completely deny those rules. So often if they deny those rules, it's very hard for them to date in Japanese society, and they may be looking to go foreign. Other times, certain things in Japanese society may not work for them, and they're looking for a compromise, and they may go foreign again. Other times, it's foreign people who like the rules in Japan and are trying to go the more ultra-conservative way. What I can say, though, is within Japanese society, no matter how much you study Japanese, no matter how much you've lived in Japan, you will never be Japanese. And they'll always expect you not to be Japanese. So I recommend going to more the ultra-liberal type. So not the mainstream of society. The mainstream is more liberal, but there are small subgroups and individuals who maybe prefer a foreign way of doing things. So just visualize with me. It's something I'm gonna come back to when I describe the dating culture. Another big part of the rules as well is LGBTQ rights. If I'm LGBTQ, can I date in Japan? If I'm this, can I? Yes, you can. I've seen it work. It is possible. Within sub-communities, it is difficult but possible, and I've seen it work in certain communities. But don't let one small part of the equation keep you down. You have to get all the other parts, okay? Now, the other parts I want to talk about is just general game in general. Women are women, men are men at the end of the day. So things like shelter, your crib has to be on point, and you have to show that. You have to market yourself accordingly. Dating in Japan is very competitive and difficult, but it is doable. If you can play at that level, sure enough, you can do it. But I recommend going to less competitive areas. So generally in Japan, the role that women are expected to play is they're expected to be maybe more a housewife, handle the home, do maybe light work. They're expected to be young, youthful, and fit into one or two standards of beauty. And some are okay with following just that. Others are trying to break away from that. So generally, they are most in demand. The most in demand Japanese women are the young-looking ones, under, I'll say, 25 or 30. I'll say under 30. Under 30, and they are so in demand by certain Japanese men. And the ideal Japanese man, a salary man. Safe, predictable. Japanese people do not like risk, and they do not like uncertainty, and they don't like outsiders. So it's very hard, even for within Japanese society, Japanese people. Someone from Tokyo to make friends with a lot of people in Osaka to make friends in Tokyo. They stay in their own little cliques. Even though there's tatemae and hon. So hon are your true feelings. Tatemae is your public face. And it's about collectivism and unity. Within that, a lot of Japanese people are indirect and don't say their true feelings. So for an outsider to come decipher this culture can be tricky, but it is possible, and you can navigate it. And that's going to play a major part in dating as well. Now, when I say navigating the culture, you may think, oh, I have to speak fluent Japanese. And again, I've seen it work for some people. I've seen it backfire completely. So if you want to learn Japanese, sure enough, you can. If you prefer not to, I've seen people do very well speaking just English. Because again, some have an expectation that you won't know Japanese, and you'll kill the fantasy by knowing too much Japanese. So on the language side of it, speaking English, you can do all right. In terms of cultural compatibility, though, liking Japanese food will do a lot for you. A lot of Japanese people for centuries have grown up eating Japanese food. So if you like Japanese food, major plus. If you like Japanese activities, major plus. You can do them in English though, but if you like Japanese things, there's more chance of cultural compatibility. If you've got a certain hobby, again, that helps a lot with your personality and compatibility. In terms of humor though, Western humor does not work in Japan at all, and it's always backfired whenever I've used it. Sarcasm does not work in Japan. Boring, predictable is okay. Perfect. That's perfect. That will do well in Japan. In terms of speaking English though, speak slowly, use simple words, and you'll be okay. Communication will be a lot better. Learning Japanese does help some. Speaking it, not always. So your listening will help a lot, and you can find what works best for you. What's also interesting in Japan is the particular take on masculinity and femininity. So I wouldn't say it's more or less than other Western countries, but it comes out in a very different way. So even sexuality, you can get a bit of a culture shock in the way it appears. Now, what is considered sexy can be more healthy and more youthful. Often, the chest area for women is a no-show, and the legs you can show as much as you want. And again, it's just a different culture. There have been stories of Western women being perceived as promiscuous, and it's because of, again, it's a cultural difference. Kissing in Japan is seen as the same as smash. So in the gentleman's guide to dating in Japan, I would really recommend that you try observe couples in like popular areas and see that holding some do the Western thing of holding hands, but generally the idea of skinship or the body touch is not something you do in public, because again, kissing can be seen the same as full-on intercourse. So kissing in public could be perceived as full-on intercourse. So just be aware of that. Some honestly don't care. Some Japanese people have lived in other countries and are cool with it and are expecting it. Others are like, no, I can't do it. Again, just it's a different culture. And what I've also seen is a lot of Japanese people, the ones that want to meet foreign people, have a very specific country in mind they want to meet. So maybe they saw a movie, and you see how powerful the media is. Thank goodness for Black Panther, and we need to make like more media, and you need to represent your culture to the fullest. You need to invest and support a YouTuber that's representing you and your people, because the media, Ranzo in Japan also said it, media is such a powerful tool. And you need to be an ambassador for your culture to the fullest and market it. So some Japanese people really want to see Finland. Some want to see Norway. Some really want to see Iceland. Some want to see Denmark. Some want to see USA. Some, funny enough, want to see Africa. Some want to see India. And you have to find your little niche in society. If you're not in a big city, it's a bit tough. I recommend going online. And generally, dating in Japan it's a women's game. Women choose the guy, but at the same time, the guy is expected to lead. So usually, the vibe is try improve yourself to the max. Be as appealing as you are. On your Instagram, you show you've got the basic things like you're stable, you're entertaining, shelter, resources, personality, you're healthy. Some are looking for maybe a roughneck, some are looking for a sportsman, some are looking for someone who reads a lot. Like, you never know. There's so many different personality types, but they all seem to be affected by the general history and contemporary media. Is a big thing. Another thing that has a big effect on the personality is their parents. So a lot of the time, the idea of a relationship is based on what their parents had. So if you are the type of foreigner who you can't exactly take home to show the parents, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for you. Sometimes you may have to have the relationship in secret because, again, society judges people and gossip is serious. So sometimes Japanese people will be even scared to be seen in public with you because, again, their name and their reputation is everything. And just based on the role a lot of women are expected to play, you can't be a playboy. It is the scariest thing because a lot of these women, their whole plan is who they're going to marry. That is the game plan. So if they're getting played, they lose big time. Now, there are playgirls too. Like, there are girls playing the field, granted, who are just having fun and using you for an experience, sure. But a lot of the time when they're dating someone, the plan is they may move to the country of the person they're dating, or they're expecting that person to stay in Japan, and they need someone to support them. And their parents support them really well. Japan is a first world country, and unless you can play it at that level, a lot of Japanese people won't see you as someone able to date them. So they tend to gravitate to other first world countries, and a lot of them are European. France is very popular, Germany is popular, Britain is popular, USA is popular, because they have a stereotype that someone from those countries could provide for them, or they feel it's another country that they could live in. And it's difficult for Japanese people to live, I'd say, outside of Japan. Granted, we know these stereotypes are not true, but Japanese people do not like risk and do not like uncertainty. So they use stereotypes to understand the world. Granted, not everyone from France is rich, not everyone from USA is rich, but it's the perception that Japanese people have. So you have to educate them, and you have to show them, and you have to you have to break these stereotypes, and that is how you can really succeed in Japan. Always stay positive, and always look for those exceptions. Look for those subculture people. Okay. Another interesting thing is the culture of kokuhaku. So kokuhaku is a love confession, and generally in Japan, you love someone first and then you start dating. So again, that links into the not liking risk, not liking uncertainty. But as a foreigner, different may be expected of you, or other times, you have to erase that element of risk. You have to show them, I'm polite, I'm cool, I'm normal, and show them that those stereotypes don't apply to me. So again, a major important thing. If you were to compare the Japanese mindset to the Korean mindset, some things are opposite, but some things hold the same. So in the Korean mindset, because of, again, different historical influences and a different culture, things like contemporary Korean media, K-pop, a lot of Korean women expect a relationship to be more like a K-drama or a K-pop song. The influence by the Mongols made them more direct, and they'll let their feelings out at times. So the American influence in Korea has also affected the perception of the countries they're very interested in. Negative African image as well in Korea, but again, due to a couple of other reasons, it can also be beaten. Dating in Korea, I'd say Korea is more romantic, I would say. Dating in Japan is difficult, and I think there are more substitutes for dating. And the social pressure as well. A lot of Japanese people aren't interested in dating. They may be more concerned in their career, or they've been so frustrated by dating. They don't like the uncertainty in dating, and Japanese people are also very picky. So there's something very specific they want. If they don't get it, they're happy with having nothing. So they don't compromise. And a lot of the time, if there's some women who've completely given up on dating in Japanese society, they may eventually, out of sheer frustration, try a foreigner. So again, I recommend not going to very